There are few people in the world today that will deny that Donald Trump is really shaking up the system that has put the world in the shape that it's in today. His prolific use of executive orders is quickly stopping the proliferation of radical practices such as DEI, transgender programming into minors, big government, and a system that allows politicians and government employees to spend our money with little to no oversight. Those days are gone. But today, we are going to address a practice that, according to the White House, was responsible for halting the lives of millions of people around the world. We are going to talk about gain-of-function research, which President Donald Trump has just addressed in one of his May 5th executive orders. What is gain-of-function research? What are the potential benefits? What are the potential risks? Who's doing it? And who's paying for it? This video is going to hopefully open the eyes of a lot of trusting people and help them understand how irresponsible science, regulation, and government has become. So much has happened in this area that it's impossible for me to tell you everything that has gone down. So I'm going to give you an outline and provide lots of links in the description where you can search for evidence of who did what, when. It's a fascinating story that really tells us how this behemoth of a government organization became populated with people that sacrificed ethics and the safety of the people against the concerns of many. How do they get away with it? How do a few manipulate many? How has the system failed us? And what can be changed to benefit the collective and not the few? When did it happen? To understand that, you should go back to November of 1984, when Dr. Anthony Fouchi became director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, or NIAID. Do you remember what life was like for you then? I sure do. I was just starting out as a pharmacist. So 1984 is when Dr. Fauci got his big gig in the U.S. government, just in time for the AIDS epidemic, and Fauci took the lead. Dr. Fauci's influence over the handling of AIDS is a story in itself. On May 11, 2021, Fauci testified under oath, stating, "The NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology." But records indicate that the first transparent gain-of-function studies began in 2001, 20 years before. In fact, there's evidence that gain-of-function research was conducted by the Nazi scientists that were hired by our government under Operation Paperclip. I'll link a video on that for your review. So check out those links. If I were still working as an investigator, getting to the bottom of the COVID-19 pandemic would be my only focus because the truth is there, but it is engulfed in a shroud of classified documents and false narratives. This goes really deep, guys. I've got all the information I need in front of me, but did you ever look for a ring on the beach the day after? You'll be looking forever, and you don't even know if it's been washed away, never to be found. That is what's happening in every area of what we are seeing. We have everything we need, but the key is having the time to find it. So we'll leave it up to the professionals and wait for the prosecutions. We'll know, and we will likely have conclusions by the administration, so we don't need to check to see if somebody said it in a phone call. There's only so much that can be shared, so it's up to us to research it if we want all the specifics. This video is going to be a bit technical, but I'll do my best to make it as easy to understand as possible. Don't forget to help me out by hitting the thumbs up button. Share the video and let the world know about what has been going on in the dark recesses of biolabs in foreign countries on our dime. I'm still working on the channel subscriptions where I will have an option for personal consultations. Okay, so let's dig into this topic that is part of the underbelly of government and science. Gain-of-function, or GOF, research involves altering an organism, typically a virus or bacteria, to enhance certain properties such as increased transmissibility, expanded host range, and greater pathogenicity. I want to address each of these to be perfectly clear what we are talking about. If something is modified to increase transmissibility, this means that the virus or bacteria will spread from one person to another more easily. This is done a number of ways. Specific genetic mutations can be introduced that help the virus bind more efficiently to host cell receptors, such as changing spike proteins in coronaviruses. They can also alter the virus to replicate or multiply faster within human host cells. But there are even more ways to make a pathogen more dangerous. They can modify them so that the virus survives longer in aerosols or on surfaces. And lastly, they can increase transmissibility by modifying a virus or bacteria so that it evades the immune system more effectively. Gain-of-function research can also be designed to expand host range by expanding receptor binding. To understand this, you must understand that viruses and bacteria must bind to specific receptors on human host cells. To accomplish this, researchers alter the viral surface proteins so they can bind to receptors in other species, such as from birds or bats to humans. Expanded host range occurs when the virus is repeatedly introduced and passed through cells or live animals of a new species, such as mice or ferrets. Over time, the pathogen evolves naturally to infect and replicate better in that host. Lastly, to expand host range, researchers may add or swap genes from viruses that already infect the target species, enhancing compatibility. Have you got that one? You change the virus or bacteria to look like other pathogens that already exist, which would also allow them to be more compatible with existing receptor sites. For instance, in studies on avian influenza, scientists engineered mutations allowing the virus to bind human-type respiratory receptors rather than avian-type receptors. These techniques allegedly help researchers predict how viruses might jump species, but they obviously come with serious safety concerns when we modify viruses and bacteria so that they can infect us. Proponents argue that this research is necessary to study how viruses might evolve in nature and what mutations could make them more dangerous to humans. But they aren't evolving in nature. They are evolving through man-made changes in laboratories, so I don't buy this. Next, they argue that gain-of-function research is used to simulate future viral strains to help in preparing vaccines or treatments in advance. Are you getting this? New enhanced pathogens are being created so we can make drugs for something that doesn't exist yet. This is ludicrous to me and is like releasing a pack of genetically enhanced cyber wolves in a city so that we can study how to build better urban wolf-proof shelters, just in case cyber wolves ever evolve on their own. Now that you understand what is done in gain-of-function research and the purported reasons that labs across the world are deliberately making more dangerous viruses and bacteria, tell me if you can think of any reason that would justify such actions. And to make things worse, our tax dollars are used to support this build-it-to-beat-it research logic. Again, Anthony Fauci repeatedly denied such funding, but a letter has surfaced where Dr. Fauci wrote, "The limited experiment described in the final progress report provided by EcoHealth Alliance was testing if spike proteins from naturally occurring bat coronaviruses circulating in China were capable of binding to the human ACE2 receptor in a mouse model." Let's look at a real-life example that has been admitted to by the mainstream community. About 11 years ago, two labs conducted controversial genetic engineering experiments on the H5N1 avian influenza virus to study its potential for mammalian transmission, particularly in ferrets. Now, nobody really cares a lot about transmission in ferrets. They were used as a model for human influenza infection, so the true intent was to study the potential for transmission in humans, even though it was quite rare. The first known human cases of H5N1 were in Hong Kong in 1997, with only 18 infections and 6 deaths scattered across several districts. But most were linked to live poultry markets and handling of infected birds in wet markets. Is this starting to ring a bell with you yet? After that, the virus re-emerged in 2003 and allegedly spread to various countries, causing hundreds more cases, even though the virus was sensitive to Tamiflu and a simple antibiotic could kill the virus in vivo. So what was the big risk, and why is it resurfacing? I did a video on the bird flu and its virulence, and I will link it at the end of this video. As I mentioned in the video, I was still practicing pharmacy and remember how this alleged outbreak was handled in very unorthodox ways. Gain-of-function research has been conducted on several viruses and bacteria beyond H5N1, with funding from U.S. agencies such as the National Institutes of Health, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and the Department of Defense. Does knowing this make you feel safer? Here is a brief summary of notable examples. Gain-of-function research was conducted on SARS-CoV, or Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus, from 2005 to 2010, funded by the NIH and other agencies, notably through EcoHealth Alliance and research at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. You might want to remember these universities when sending your kids off to college. From 2012 to 2014, gain-of-function research expanded significantly. SARS-like coronaviruses were made using bat COVID spike proteins with SARS backbones to test human infectivity. This research wasn't published until 2015. Then a virus named MSCOV was studied for gain-of-function and was funded by the NIH, also adapting spike proteins. MSCOV is Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus. It occurred to me that all of these viruses that they are trying to enhance for human infectivity cause respiratory symptoms. Then they required people to wear masks everywhere. I did a video on how the masks contributed that you should see and share with your mask-wearing friends. From 2014 to 2017, the U.S. placed a moratorium on new gain-of-function research involving influenza, SARS, and MERS, but some projects proceeded under exceptions or were reclassified. The reason for the moratorium was biosafety concerns after numerous lab accidents involving anthrax, smallpox, and avian influenza at federal labs. Also, there were ethical concerns raised by scientists and lawmakers about creating potentially pandemic-capable pathogens. And lastly, there was controversy over the H5N1 research that made the virus transmissible in mammals, triggering fears of a lab-induced outbreak. Poetic, isn't it? If our lawmakers would have maintained this cautious status of ethics and safety concerns, 7 to 20 million more people would be alive today. 7 million is the official toll from the World Health Organization, but some estimates that include excess mortality suggest the true number may be closer to 15 or 20 million deaths. Other known gain of research is classified, and that includes Ebola and Marburg research funded by the Department of Defense and NIAID, which Fouchi has been the director of for 41 years. These studies focused on viral adaptation in animal models. They also often involve modifying the viruses to enhance replication in animals. A 2009 PMC article highlights how Marburg virus evades interferon responses, suggesting gain-of-function experiments to understand immune evasion mechanisms. Such research aims to predict how these viruses might adapt to human hosts, but the details are restricted. But our agencies aren't the only ones getting in on creating killer viruses for research. Also restricted are studies on anthrax conducted by DARPA and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. These particular studies involve genetic modifications to enhance anthrax's resistance to vaccines or increase its virulence. Can you believe what these people were playing with in laboratories across the world? I think we need another disclosure dump on the studies done on Ebola, Marburg, anthrax, and other select agents. How about you? So why in the world would they reinstate gain-of-function research if it might be unethical or unsafe? Somebody created the P3CO framework, which stands for Potential Pandemic Pathogen Care and Oversight. The P3CO framework, implemented in 2017, is a U.S. government policy that sets guidelines for reviewing and approving high-risk research involving enhanced pathogens with pandemic potential. We know this framework was skillfully worked on by Anthony Fauci. Coincidentally, the P3CO framework was set to expire on May 6, 2025, one day after President Trump EO on gain-of-function research. P3CO was scheduled to be replaced with the United States government policy for oversight of dual-use research of concern and pathogens with enhanced pandemic potential. It was written on May 6, 2024, to become effective on May 6, 2025. This new policy would have increased the allowable toxins that could be funded and researched from 15 to 68 potential pandemic pathogens, and I've left a link to them in the description. The new policy merged 3 different oversight policies into one, and critics claim that interpretive ambiguities are of concern. The new executive order is entitled Improving the Safety and Security of Biological Research, and while the order does not outright ban all gain-of-function research, instead, it directs the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, or OSTP, to revise or replace the 2024 DIRC-PEP policy within 120 days to strengthen oversight and enforcement of dangerous gain-of-function research defined as research on infectious agents or toxins that enhances pathogenicity or transmissibility. The order does not explicitly ban all gain-of-function research, but imposes stringent measures, including enhanced oversight, audits, and public transparency. Enforcement mechanisms in federal funding agreements, with penalties like funding revocation or up to 5 years of ineligibility for violators, and restrictions on funding such research in foreign countries with inadequate biosafety oversight. I have to admit that I am of the mindset that there should never be gain-of-function research. Personally, I think playing with Mother Nature is a recipe for disaster. However, I do understand that bioweapons and computers have become the weapons of the future, and we must be prepared. President Trump stated that the policy is intended to ensure that United States federally funded research benefits American citizens without jeopardizing our nation's security, strength, or prosperity. The order in part reads, "My administration will balance the prevention of catastrophic consequences with maintaining readiness against biological threats and driving global leadership in biotechnology, biological countermeasures, biosecurity, and health research." So he's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. If he cuts all research out, we might not be able to protect ourselves if others have the bioweapons and we don't. So it looks like it might be a necessary evil, like other weapons, but he intends to put tighter restrictions on it. The order also established policies for the suspension of federally funded dangerous gain-of-function research and provides for review and revision at least every 4 years, or as appropriate. This makes me think that he wants to prevent this thing from being tied up in the courts, so rather than just shutting down the funding, he's giving the departments until September 5th to establish policies so that when funding is cut, a specific procedure will have been followed. So that's where we stand, guys. There can still be gain of research funding, but it is banned in countries of concern or foreign countries where there is not adequate oversight to ensure that the countries are compliant with United States oversight standards. My belief is that Trump is truly trying to clean up this. There's a lot going on in the background, and I do believe that it's going to take time to unravel this mess. For me, I look at what's going on behind the scenes that the media isn't talking about. One of those things is that the NIH has shut down Fauci's labs where, in my opinion, he ruthlessly tortured thousands of beagle puppies in the name of his science. One reason that beagles are used so often in this Frankenstein research is because they are innately friendly, trusting, and less likely to bite or resist handlers. I'm sorry, guys, I worked in animal labs in college, and this just breaks my heart. Hell, I felt bad for the rats. What type of person does it take to deliberately harm and snuff the life out of these sentient beings that God has entrusted us with? I also remember in college that my anatomy class required anesthetizing healthy cats and then dissecting them until there was nothing left of them and then throwing them in garbage bags. This was allegedly so we could see the organs functioning. I refused to do it. It was never going to happen with me, even at 25 years old. I also had to dissect a corpse, but he was dead already, and I wasn't expected to kill him. While I did learn a tiny bit from the corpse, in today's world of computer models, I don't find such barbaric animal sacrifice necessary. I hope that this explains biologicals used for warfare and how our country has treated them in the past. I hope it also brings to light how low mankind has sunk in the name of science and profit. Gain of function and cruel animal research reveal how far we've strayed from compassion. Yet I hold fierce hope that humanity can rise, redeem itself, and finally honor all life as sacred. Let's end this video with a quote from Jeremy Bentham, who was a philosopher and a legal scholar focused on ethics violations. He said, "The question is not, can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer?"